Started. And Greg, if you'd like to go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Kimberly. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight. So let's go ahead and run through the agenda quickly. So we've already introduced the presenters. So we are going to go through the existing conditions of the pavement and just the existing roadway and talk, discuss how we got here. And then we'll move to the project scope that we're proposing, and the purpose of this meeting. Get into constraints of the project, and then also get into the different layouts that we have proposed and move to the timeline of the project. And then we will finally end with public comment. Next slide, please. All right, so starting with the existing conditions, uh, Terry actually provided these photos in a report, which, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the drainage on Pierson Street, and that is just essentially flooding everywhere. So, um, and it seems like it's just over time, there was an existing drainage swale on either side, and it just seems like slowly that has filled up where now the water, has nowhere to go. And part of it also is the existing storm drain infrastructure. Over time, I think the concrete pipes have just, misaligned, and also some of them are cracked and in bad condition. So that's, the storm drain and the drainage portion, that is the problem. And the other thing is the existing water infrastructure. So there's an existing 6-inch water main, but there is actually no hydrants along Pearson Street. And that's probably due to the size of the 6-inch not being able to handle enough fire flow. Um, but yes, that is the water infrastructure. The sewer is an existing 6-inch sewer main that also is outdated in terms of the size. And lastly, excuse me, we have the pavement condition, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. We have many potholes along the street, and yeah, the pavement is just not good at all. And I think the pavement thickness is just above 6 inches of just asphalt on just the native soils. There's no base or anything. It's just 6 inches of asphalt. So yeah, so that is kind of the rundown of which again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the existing conditions and where we're at today. Next slide, please. Okay, so now getting into the project scope, starting with the water infrastructure. So this project that we're planning, we would upgrade the 6-inch water to an 8-inch. And then in doing so, all of the services, meaning all of the water lines that are going to your individual houses, uh, that will be replaced up into the meter. So from the main that we're replacing to your water meter, that is going to be replaced. But from your water meter to your house, that will remain the same. So we're replacing that segment for each house, and then the water main. And then additionally, we will add 2 new fire hydrants. For the sewer, it's pretty similar. We are upgrading the 6-inch sewer to an 8-inch. Similarly, the sewer laterals, meaning all of the sewer lines that are going to each individual house, that will also be replaced up into the clean out. So again, from the sewer main to the clean out, which is just outside of your house, that segment will be replaced. And then the manholes, I think there's like three in the roadway. Those 3 manholes will also be replaced. In terms of the stormwater infrastructure, we are planning to replace everything except the last 25 feet, and I will get into the reason why not we're not doing the last 25 feet in the next slide. Um, but we're also probably going to change the orientation or just change how the storm drain is set in place as well. Um, and then additionally, we are going to present a concrete drainage swale also later in the presentation, of helping to capture all the stormwater and concentrating it to those catch basins. And then lastly, and most importantly, we will be removing replacement of 6 inches of pavement. Um, and that will fix all the potholes and all the issues. So that is, yeah, most important, I think, as well. Next slide, please. All right, now getting into the constraints of the project, which I think is important for everyone to understand, what we're up against or, just what we have to deal with. I guess my job, what I have to deal with. The first one being low impact development. And I know that's maybe some of you know, some of you don't, but the purpose of low impact development is in the example on the left where we have stormwater coming in and we have these plants and the soil that's essentially filtering the stormwater before it gets into the storm drain and before it gets into the creek. So our stormwater and creeks team developed a requirement if we disturb 10,000 square feet of native soil. So, like in the example of our street, if we disturb anything outside of our roadway because that's technically native and it's above 10,000 square feet, then this would trigger us requiring low impact development, like the image shown on the left of a bioretention area. So that is something to keep in mind of, this limits us of how much infrastructure we can add at one time because again, it would be required to add something like this. Additionally, it sounds like at the beginning of next year, this will go down to 5,000 square feet. So that's another thing that we are racing against to get this built before that happens. The next important constraint is the existing storm drain outlet to the creek. So at the creek, since the storm drain is gravity, we have it set in place at the creek outlet. And the reason this is a constraint is we can't really change this elevation because if we actually change this elevation, then this would trigger a 401 or a 404 permit, which is with the State Water Board, and that just means it could take up to a year to get a permit from them. So we really don't want to change that elevation at all. And that's the reason why we're keeping the last 25 feet of storm drain as it is. Um, so I think it's, yeah, just important to note that, and really that constrains us by how much storm drain we can add, because it's not like we can just add a bunch of storm drain that's around Third Street and make it all the way to the creek. Additionally, the residential drainage. So that just, we have to ensure that all of the um, frontage and everyone's property, which is within our, city right of way, that all of that drains to the catch basins. So that just means we can't create barriers, like let's say a curb that would just block the water from going into the catch basins. The other is the existing pavement thickness. Since it's only 6 inches, we really can't afford to lower the pavement. On top of that, we have the sewer underneath, and that's pretty shallow. So we are reluctant to lower the roadway in any way, and we're just basically stuck with the 6 inches. We can always add more pavement on top. We just can't like remove from the bottom, if that makes sense. And then finally, utility conflicts, which is probably the most frustrating because there's, a lot of these pipes are shallow, and especially the storm drain with the sewer, because we have all the sewer laterals going to each house, and we have to put a storm drain through all of those. So I just want you to all to understand that we have though, like the utility conflicts is probably another one of our biggest constraints of what we can and can't do. So yeah, so that's kind of a big picture of what we're dealing with for this project. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to get into the concepts that we considered, and this first being uh, parking on both sides with sidewalk on both sides. We have 25 feet of right of way on either side of the center line. So technically we can fit two travel lanes an 8-foot parking, and then a curb and gutter, and then 4-foot sidewalk on either side. But here's the thing with that is because we're adding all this additional like concrete, this would go over the 10,000 square feet of disturbance of, of the native soil. So what that truly means, to put it in perspective, is we're talking about if we were to add, if this created 27 spaces, is kind of roughly what we calced out. 12 of those spaces would be removed if we were to choose the bioretention areas, for instance, like to put it in perspective.
Those are
Eh,
parking spaces.
yes, parking spaces. Yes, thank you, Rob. Um, so I just want to make that very clear. And additionally, with the money that we have right now, we have not planned. It would just take much more planning and saving to actually save for this additional infrastructure like the sidewalk and the parking. And so, I mean, it's gonna be another like 4 years before construction would actually start because of all the planning and getting the money in hand. And lastly, I want to point out, um, I do want to clarify that the LID, like the bioretention areas, for instance, that would be annual maintenance by the city of Santa Rosa each year. And then we would have to program almost like, the LID, the low impact development is permanent. So let's say every 6 or 10 years, we have to plug in money to actually replace it, replace the soil or the plants. So I just want to make that also clear that that is also an annual thing that we would have to deal with the low impact development. So yeah, this is just the concept day again with parking on both sides with sidewalk and curb and gutter. Next slide, please. All right, moving to concept B, which is another option we considered. This is having parking and the sidewalk on the east side and then a 6-foot swale on the west side. The reason we chose the east side is because the sidewalk on the bridge is also on the east side, so we just have a continuous uh, pathway. And then uh, the important thing to note on this is we would still exceed the 10,000 square feet of disturbance. And to put that in perspective, again, this is removing like approximately 10 parking spaces out of the 27 spaces that we calculated. Um, and then on the bottom, the bottom right, you can see kind of a cross section where we have the 10-foot travel lane parking, and with the grades, it's kind of slowly coming up to your front yard or to your driveway. Um, and because of we're limited by the grading, I think we would pretty much have the curb sticking out, and then the sidewalk would be below that. So you would be, again, like the curb is sticking out, but that's how we would think to get the water to, or sorry, get the sidewalk to meet where the grade is around the frontage of your yard. And then we would have just curb openings ever so often to let water through. But again, this option does trigger low impact development. And additionally, the planning and cost of this, we're looking at 3 to 4 years to actually start construction. And the same thing with the annual maintenance on the city to for annually every year to pay for. So this is again the concept B with swale on the west side and then a parking and sidewalk on the other side, on the east side. Next slide, please. So that is now, or now we're landing with concept C, which is what we're really recommending and have the money for. And that is having the 10-foot, 10-foot travel lanes as you do now, but adding a 6-foot concrete swale on either side. And the concrete swale would act as a dual purpose where we have within the 6 feet, we would have we'd act as a 4-foot walkway Um, and that walkway, or the swale would be under the 2% cross slope, meaning it would just be ADA accessible, and again, acting like an actual sidewalk. This would also alleviate the drainage problem because now we have a designated swale where it leads to the catch basins to collect. Um, the good news, it also stays within the 10,000 square feet of disturbance, so low impact development is not triggered. And then behind the swale, we do still have 8 feet of space available for parking within the total right of way. Um, and the best thing about this option is that we have the money to build this, and we believe, and I believe we can deliver this next year and start construction in summer of next year. Um, so I know this may not be what everyone wants. I know we may have um, you know, conflicting opinions, but I truly think this is our best foot forward. And again, the money that we have is to fix the drainage. We add we have a sidewalk, we fix the drainage, we have new pavement, um, and there's still parking on the either side. So um, again, I think this is our recommended option. So I'm gonna go ahead with the next slide, please. And and this is just a timeline I put together showing how we're going to deliver this for the drainage swale option um, in for next summer. So I would plan to have 40% plans done by August and then work through October, December to have 100% plans by the end of January. And then we'd have our bid open in March and then construction to begin in the summer of 2026. So again, this is the timeline for the drainage swale layout that we just discussed. Next slide, please. All right, so now that we've reached the questions and answers, before we begin these, I'll ask Kimberly Hopwood to review and how you can participate by asking live questions and comments.
Thank you, Greg. Once Greg calls for public questions or comments, we will announce for anyone wishing to ask a question or comment to raise your hand in Zoom. For anyone participating by telephone, actually, let me take a peek real quick. I don't see any phone calls yet. Anyone calling in? So we will call on the public one by one who has their Zoom hand raised, and you will receive a prompt. When you answer the prompt, your microphone may be unmuted so you can ask your question. Once you have raised your hand and asked your question or shared your input, your hand will be lowered and your microphone muted. And we want to really encourage as many as possible to participate and ask questions.
All right, let's go ahead with the first participant.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Our first is, it shows the name Sheila.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say before we get into the questions and answers that not everybody was available to be here tonight. So we have arranged on June 30th a second meeting in person from 5:30 to 6:30 at Chops over on Chops on West 6th. That's it.
Oh, okay, thank you, Sheila. All right, our next comment is from Tiffany. Let's see. Tiffany, you should receive a prompt.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
So I have written down a few questions, but I guess I'll start with the first one. What is the purpose of low impact development?
Thank you, Tiffany. I think the purpose is just to like in the example of the bioretention area, it was to filter like the stormwater before it ends up in the creek. And so like by planting the or having the soil and the plants, like it's the stormwater is coming in and filtering before it ends up in the storm drain and goes to the creek.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so if that's the purpose of the low impact development, then by avoiding that, won't we be sending unfiltered dirty water into the creek?
I mean, that is a good question. I mean, technically on the roadway, we will have the swale and it's going through concrete and yeah, I mean hopefully the sediment drops in the catch basin before it goes to the creek, but technically, yes, anything that's on the asphalt and the concrete will go into our storm drain system. I think on the side of the front yards, you guys have you guys have more gravel, is that correct? On on the frontage. If so, that will drop off most of the dirty water before it goes into the swale.
Were those your only questions, Tiffany?
Oh, no, I have a few. I didn't know if you wanted me to keep going. Is there another street in Santa Rosa that has the swale on both sides that we could refer to? I can't even, I'm not even sure what a swale is. And again, I kind of dropped out of the conversation for a month or two there, but can you tell us another area in Santa Rosa that has the swale on both sides of the road?
I don't believe I don't actually believe we have another street that has this.
I don't think we do.
What is, okay. Am I the only one who's unclear on what that looks like or what it is?
So it's a very low ditch, basically. It's kind of like it's like a ditch, but it's a very low profile ditch to capture the water and direct it to the catch basins or the drainage inlets to constant and then to deliver it to the creek.
So this would be without sidewalks?
Correct. So the drainage swale would do a dual purpose of being a place for the water to collect and for people to walk on the side near the gravel out of the roadway.
Okay, then I just have one more comment that I've lived here for a very long time, and in my own opinion, and I think I've said this before, the lack of sidewalks is a huge problem. There are children walking up and down the street, and the traffic that goes up and down the street, even though it's 25 miles an hour, that they don't always go 25 miles an hour. And I just want to leave it at that I personally believe that sidewalks are one of our most pressing issues on this road.
Thank you, Tiffany. And again, I just want to reiterate that it's like the swale is acting like a sidewalk. It's just a dual purpose. Again, it's going to be all concrete, 6 feet wide, and it's going to be a dual purpose of collecting water and being essentially a sidewalk.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Okay. Next up, we have Terry Knoll.
Oh, hi, Kimberly
Hi.
and Greg. Well, I have a zillion questions. Isn't this an intermittent street design? From your-
Yes, Terry, yes, you are correct. We could make this interim and then add curb and gutter and sidewalk to the edge of this. Because basically since we have 6 feet of swale and the parking is 8 feet, so that 2 extra feet needed is the gutter of a curb and gutter to make 8 feet, and then we would add the sidewalk, like a dedicated true sidewalk after that.
Okay, well, I liked this design until I discovered that the swale is on the outside of the parked cars, so that there's going to be this weaving in and out, and anybody who's walking is going to get, and a car goes astray, is going to get squished into a car. I mean, I'd rather walk down the middle of the street than in a swale, especially if it's raining. But so of course my personal concern has been the lack of curbs, which barrier curbs to protect pedestrians. And as far as I can tell, this design without curbs and without driveway curb cuts violates the street design code to have curb cuts and curbs. And it's going to, I don't know, it's just like looks really scary. That it's not safe. This doesn't look safe to a pedestrian to me, especially when they're pulling in and out, which is our main. And because there's no curb, it doesn't restrict the passage of cars over the right of way into their front yard, because there's no defined driveway curb cut. Then there is no defined place for people to enter and exit their properties, which is, my understanding, is supposed to be code, so that pedestrians know when a car is going to come out and where. And also, when people do that here, because we lack curbs, that essentially results in people using the entire the entire frontage of their lot, because we don't have any curbs. They use the entire frontage of their lot as a driveway and back out again. And then when they've driven in over the right of way, which will mean they're driving in over the sidewalk where people are walking, and cars are going in and out and exiting and coming and going. And when they do that, then no one can park in the street behind them, because they're going to back out. And about half the people on the block have posted illegal private property or no parking or tow away signs that, even though the parking division knows about them, they never came out and took them away. So, I just have a lot of concerns of this being violations of vehicle codes, and furthering the main problem with our street, which is there's no traffic control. People don't park legally parallel to the traffic lane. They park any old which way. They drive in over their entire frontage, and they block pedestrian passage. And I don't know, this looks, like I said, I would rather walk down the middle of the street than walk on that thing. If that swale was on the inside of the parked cars, you'd have me, honey.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
yeah,
Terry. Thank you, Terry. We have
Oh,
a lot
that's
of other hands, and we're gonna go ahead and ask Rob to
yeah.
jump
I
in.
want to answer a couple questions real quick. I don't know if there are questions, but just address some of the issues that were brought up. So we absolutely can put in a concrete curb along the swale and then put gaps in it for the water to get into it. What that would do, though, is it would eliminate any of the on-street parking on whatever side of the street we do that on. So there's trade-offs. So that's why we want to get your feedback. We want to hear what is parking most important to everyone? Would a sidewalk be more important to everyone? We can't do everything. That's this with the constraints that we have on the street. We can't keep all the existing parking and add a sidewalk or a curbed walkway. So there's going to be trade-offs. So that's what we want to hear from, what trade-offs are people willing to give up?
Thank you, Rob. So if as time permits, we can come back around, but we're gonna go ahead and move on to Noel Johnson. Noel, if you could please answer the prompt.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so it sounds like the main financial constraint here are the LID requirements, is that right? Of like a fuller, the full shebang.
It's also due to like the added sidewalk and the curbs. I mean, yes, the bioretention areas do add costs, but it's more of just the amount of concrete cost that adds to the project.
Was there any consideration, and I have no idea what the cost of this is compared to standard concrete, but any of the permeable pavement that's available now?
I think the only concern with the permeable pavement, I mean, we had used that in some instances, is that it just gets plugged so quickly, and then it's kind of like a maintenance nightmare for us, where you know how it's like just sediment just goes in and then fills those voids, and then it no longer can just easily drain. We're finding that it's just hard for the upkeep of something like that. But yes, we were thinking about that at one point, but it's just when we talked to our maintenance crews, they all pushed back saying that's not something they can maintain or good at maintaining.
Okay, is that, because there's no, I'm kind of wondering what the source of sediment would be here. Like I could see that in other areas where you have sediment coming in, but I mean, it's hard
Yeah,
to imagine somewhere this flat where you'd get this big sediment source coming in.
I mean, I would just say like over the course of a year, I would say that there's quite a bit of just dust and just like from cars or just anything from yards. Like I really do think a lot of it does over time just go into the voids. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of an example of where we've done that, but there's a few places where it's already been like plugged and then we're kind of looking at that saying, okay, let's not do that anymore because it keeps continuing to get plugged.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, Noel. Our next up is Sarah. Sarah, if you would like to answer that prompt.
Can you hear me? Oops.
We can, but it's kind of echoey.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to echo some of the things that other people said. I know that you're asking for public comment and we live here, and I want to echo that I think the most important thing, probably the top priority, is the safety and the ability to walk along the street. People are using the street. People come to walk to our house. People from our house that live here walk to the trail. We walk to downtown, and walking is incredibly dangerous without a sidewalk and without a curb. Of course, it's also very difficult to walk in flooded water. And I don't see this model, this concept C addressing that concern. If the dual purpose of the concrete swale is also to be a place to walk and it's raining, you're asking people to walk in the puddling rain that is in the swale or walk around it, which means you're walking in the street again, or on the side, which you're going to leave unpaved, which again will be muddy and full of cars. And when it's full of cars, we have 3 children. One of them is 8 weeks old. We have a stroller. We cannot stroll the stroller in the parking area, so we're going to have to go into the concrete swale and walk in the water. So most likely we're going to walk in the middle of the street, which we see lots of people doing all the time. It's incredibly dangerous, and we would love for that to be rectified with this plan. And I am willing to wait if it's 4 or 5 years to get the funding so that we actually get those curbs and get that sidewalk in, so that I'm not worried about my friends who are coming in from the West End to visit me with their kids pushing a stroller, or their elderly grandmother pushing a wheelchair has to be doing that in the middle of the road just to get to my house. So that's my concern.
Would you be willing to give up parking along your frontage?
Yes,
Okay, great.
I think that's more important, is that
And
we
that's the
don't
kind of
have
feedback we want. We want to know what are you willing to give up in order to get, right? I mean, that's because that's where we want to get the feedback from the neighborhood, so we can understand what, yeah, exactly what you're saying, what your most important items are, so we could hopefully address that.
So Rob, just one question about giving up parking. Is the giving up the parking because of the low impact areas with the plants, or is the giving up parking because we're now putting a curb, and so people can't park front on their frontage kind of anywhere they want, or
It-
both, I guess?
Well, so it depends. So if we go with option C as an interim option, in the interim, we would have basically the layout that's shown on the screen here. In this interim layout, we could add in a concrete curb that would potentially, help block the flow of the water to the part that people would be walking on, but also provide a curb, for some separation between the travel lane. But then it would eliminate basically any of the parking except for the driveway locations along that east side of the street, if we wanted to make this continuous walkway to the bridge. Like I said, if this was, like an interim condition until we are able to then in the future add the sidewalk with the curb, gutter, and actual sidewalk.
Wait, is that because the curb is really close in, so you can't actually park on the curb?
Well, if you can't go over the curb to park in the frontage,
Right.
you'd be blocked from the or the parking along the street. We would have to put brakes where the driveways are to allow people to turn into their driveway. But basically then it would force a lot of the parking to one side of the street or the other. And I would say it would force it more to the west side, because we'd want to make the east side the main path of travel, because that connects to the bridge on the east side.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up we have, it looks like Ilya. I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. I have a couple of questions. Also following up. So if this is an interim solution, what does interim mean? Like how long is interim? And then how does that, because we essentially have to do construction twice. That seems like a really big, probably like a big delay in getting all the funds needed to like complete the project, and also a lot more time. Do you guys have any estimate on what interim would mean if this construction starts next year with concept C to bring it up to concept A or B essentially?
So I think we're looking at, I think would be maybe like around 3 to 4 years in that time frame. We're really just, I think we're really saving for the curb and gutter and the sidewalk on either side, and then also that would trigger the low impact development, so we'd have to pay for that as well. So it's paying for kind of those three big ticket items.
No, I understand, but I'm saying if we do plan C, like how far back does it set plan A or B? And it sounds like what you're saying is it doesn't set them any farther back whatsoever.
I'll say it could. It could set them back a little bit farther, just because we need to prioritize this with all the other priorities in the city as well. And not saying that this isn't a high priority and it wouldn't rise to the top, but those are the things we have to look at in I'm sure you've heard we're definitely not in a very flush financial position right now. So we'd be looking for things like grants to see if we can, apply for grants to do this kind of thing. So it could depend on how successful we are in getting grants or something like that for this project. What I will say is that typically sidewalks are a lot easier to get grants for than like just a roadway project. So I mean, if we have gaps in sidewalks, those typically score very well on active transportation grants and those types of things.
Okay. And then I guess just kind of like a general question is, you guys are asking us like, what do we prefer? Why? And this, I think this goes along with what Terry was saying, which is like, why are we getting to choose at all? Like, isn't the point, or I guess the goal, to bring the street up to city standards? So I guess why are we choosing, like the trade-offs? Because probably parking is important to some people. Safety is important to other people. Drainage is important to other people. Like, what if we can't get a consensus? Like, I guess, isn't it up to the city to, given that the city chose to take, ownership of this street, to bring it up to its own codes for streets? So why are we choosing? Why is this on us and not on the city to do right by the street?
So that's a good question. So we want your feedback, and the reason we want your feedback is I mean, this is basically our rural street. Our initial project for this street was to replace the roadway, and that was it. We weren't going to do any drainage. We weren't going to do any pedestrian. That's what we had money for. Council members and the city manager were brought into the discussions and lobbied and pushed to get more done on the street, which is great. So now with the money we have, we're trying to address what we can to hopefully, address as many of the issues that the neighborhood is most interested in this interim condition. So if we can hit a lot of them on this first round, then it helps the neighborhood out farther, much more than if we just went in and did the roadway reconstruction and left everything else alone. So because we're doing the roadway reconstruction, that brought in a lot of the utility improvements, because once we start touching the roadway, if there's utility improvements that need to be done, they don't want to go in there after we build the road, obviously, and tear it up and replace all the utilities. So they want to come in with this project as well and do the improvements that they can. So we're just trying to make sure that we're addressing what's the most concerns of those in the neighborhood. We don't have enough money to do everything up to current city code right now. So we're trying to see what we can do in this time frame and still make it. So the other thing that Greg, I don't know if you mentioned or not, but if we wait too long and this LID requirement is going to go down to 5,000 square feet. He did mention that 5,000 square feet, which means that we're going to have to actually probably add more LID features, which will then address or take away more parking. And some of the things I heard from the neighborhood was that they were concerned about parking. So I wanted to make sure that we brought that up, and some people maybe aren't concerned about parking. So, I mean, that's what we want to hear from the neighborhood is what are your concerns? Are we addressing them? Can we do anything better? And it sounds like we can do some different things from what people are saying. But that's what we want to hear.
Okay, I understand. I guess just a small clarifying question. You said this is a rural street. I hope you all don't.
Yeah.
I hope
It's
you all
not a rural street. It
don't
has
view
a
it as
rural character.
street, because
It has rural character. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Got it. Because we're starting to feel like we're in the middle of downtown, essentially, given the amount of development all around us, given the amount of foot traffic, car traffic, and honestly, like, we are concerned about all of it, because, like, as this area becomes more developed, like, we want to have parking. We want our friends to come park here. We want, our own cars to be able to park here. And yeah, so I guess like, well, I'm not sure what I'm saying, but we want it all. Is this is not a rural street, and we want it all.
And I know you want it all, but we can't give it all to you right now.
Okay, and then in any of the plans, will the 6 inches of asphalt continue to have no base, or do any of the plans have a base in it? I missed that part.
It would just be the 6 inches, like without the base, it would just be the 6 inches of asphalt. But we can, again, we can build on top of that. We just like we would be touching native, which again is essentially disturbing, and also like triggering LID if we go to the native. So
So, and the other
Go ahead.
thing with the existing roadway, just to touch on that real quick, is it didn't start out as 6 inches of asphalt. It's grown to 6 inches of asphalt over time. So what's happened is you have maybe a 2 inch layer that starts to fail. The county comes in, adds another 2 inch layer that starts to fail. They come in, add another 2 inch layer. There's your 6 inches, but they've all failed. So that failure propagation it's really only 2 inches of asphalt that you're getting each time because the base has failed. The layer below it has failed. If we go in and put 6 inches of asphalt across there, that is going to last a long time.
Okay. Thank you. I guess my priority then is safety first, drainage second, and parking third, if I had to pick.
Great, thank you.
Well, you guys are awesome at lowering your hands. I have to say, I go to lower the hand and it's already down. Thank you for that. It looks like we can come back around. And I think we have Sheila here.
Okay, I just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. Not everybody had notice of this meeting, and most importantly, Caroline was cut out of being here today because she had a prior situation for this time. And it's critical that she's part of this conversation like Chris was before her. So we have set up a subsequent meeting, in-person meeting on Monday, June 30th at Shops at 5:30. So we could review the presentation of today if you want to, talk among the neighbors, and then go back and have a second conversation with you.
Thank you, Sheila. And we have, I want a little bit of a check-in with Rob and Greg on timing. Looks like we have a few more minutes left in our allotted time.
Yep, let's keep going.
Okay, thanks. Next up, we have Terry.
Hi, I must say I'm getting a little lost here. I guess I'm not seeing that, like, okay, we're starting from the intermittent stage and then our next stage is adding curbs somewhere, but I'm not sure where. They're in the middle of the road, which makes it even crazier. And am I correct that the 8 feet of parking is still going to be mud?
so
Huh?
Terry, so like if Kimberly, if you can go back one slide to concept B,
Okay.
like on this bottom exhibit. So what I'm saying for the interim is we have the 10-foot travel lane and then 8-foot parking. So the swale right now, or that we're recommending now is 6 feet wide. But the gutter pan, meaning like the bottom of the gutter, is 2 feet wide, and then it goes like the 6 inches high. So I'm saying you would just attach the curving gutter to the edge of the swale, and then that would make your 8-foot parking, and then you would add your sidewalk behind the curb, like as shown in this cross section.
So down the road, we're gonna swap where the parking and the sidewalk are.
Yes.
Cool, then that makes me happier. I got a couple of questions, sorry. Wait, confirm your speaking language? Okay, so can I just check? So I'm assuming on this design. Okay, wait. To finish on this travel lane, 8 feet parking, 4 feet sidewalk on concept B. So at some point we flip them, and how long do you think it will be? Oh, construction starts in 3 to 4 years, or when will we end up flipping so the parking is on the outside of the sidewalk, or the sidewalk is on the inside of the parking?
I'd say that's to be determined.
Okay, I mean, you know, it is interim street, but I'm kind of back where Ilya is. How long?
Right. No, I understand. I mean, we don't have clarity because we don't have the money.
All
So
right. Are we going to get any kind of a guarantee, or are we going to say, oh, 20 years from now, we might do it, or?
so I don't have a guarantee. I wish I did, but with our finances right now, I don't have a guarantee. Like I said, if we got grants, that would be probably a likely way to do it because getting grants for pedestrian infrastructure is typically easier than roadway infrastructure.
Yeah, because we just
So but that's not a guarantee, and I understand that. But what I can guarantee is that we could do the other improvements because we have the money for them.
okay. And so I assume this means that part of one of your constraints is that you are putting the new pipes in the same at the same depth as the old pipes.
I think it'll be slightly different, except for the end. Like we have the same outlet or outfall elevation,
Okay.
but we're meeting it like 25 feet before it, and then we're going to be changing. We will be changing part of that, almost all of that storm drain. So it'll be at a slightly different elevation.
Okay, well, I'm sorry for wasting your time. That was sort of an irrelevant question. When we talked, Greg, I did mention the possibility of residents donating land to use for lids, like for instance, the tree lids that are like a square thing that, you can put anywhere, or even little gardens, because for example, Ilya and I have adjoining side setbacks, which would yield 10 feet of width, where we could put a lid that is not in the road. And I believe they make lids that don't sit in the road, and would also might help to decorate our street, since we don't have, if you do a plant one or a tree one, because we don't have any, what are those things called? Planting strips. So my other question, sorry, I had a bunch of them. My other question is, let's see, well, you can't paint. Is there any way to mark driveways, to restrict the parking so people don't just drive in all over the place like they do now? Like with painting, with traffic bumps, with anything, that would kind of contain the rampant parking situation that we have going on now, with a lot of encroachment of the row, so that it isn't a public street. That was a question.
It's a public street, so
Yeah, but you can't park like a public street, trust me, because a lot of people have posted no parking or private parking, or they
yeah.
drive straight in, so you can't park behind them in the street because they're going to back out. And I mean, virtually, at least halfway of the west side from the down to the south is not public parking. And you know, in various spots. But anyway, there, you know, that's my biggest concern. And I just wanted to point out that we did at least raise the idea that residents could voluntarily donate, for instance, adjoining side setback land, so that, which is just basically a big planter for a lid, and that would free up the parking, the street parking. Or I don't know, at least it would do, I don't know what, because I'm sort of concerned about this property values with a street, an anomaly street like this, that doesn't have curbs to restrict cars, and it doesn't have driveway curb cuts so that cars enter in one spot on their lot. Anyway, that's it, I'm done.
All right, thank you. Couple more. I think we'll just take the last, how many questions we got? More? 3 more, folks? You're muted,
Kimberly,
Terry.
yeah.
Kimberly, you're muted.
Sorry. I did notice that we had one guest join on the telephone. And so if they wanted to raise their hand and be unmuted so they can ask a question or make a comment, if they want to push *9 on their phone, then that will allow, that will make it so I can see their hand if they want to ask a question or make a comment. And then aside from that, we have back to Noelle.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering what the current width of the pavement is. Is it 20 feet?
Yeah, it's between 20 and 21.
Okay.
I mean, it varies a little bit.
I guess one concern I have with this design is the appearance of our street as being very wide is sort of what causes a lot of these yahoos to drive really fast. You know, if you're going through the Luther Burbank neighborhood or some streets in the JC neighborhood, you kind of have to slow down and weave around the parked cars on the side, and it kind of slows everything down a lot. And my concern about the concrete swale design is it's going to give that impression of an even wider street and yeah, kind of exacerbate the speeding issue, just to make that as a comment.
Nope. Noted.
Thank you. And we have our phone caller. So let me go ahead and get that unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank
Yeah.
you.
Hi, this is Ilya again. I just had to go pick up my kids, so I moved the Zoom meeting to my car. So that's why I joined on the phone. I'm wondering if, so to kind of piggyback along Noelle's concern about the width of the street giving this appearance of like a fast roadway, which I completely agree with. Is there, like, would it be possible while we're repaving the street to put in some sort of like at the JC, they have like speed tables. They're not such rigid speed bumps, but they're kind of these like very, you know, as you're driving, it takes a while for you to get over them, but they're not any taller than speed bumps. So they really do deter speeding. Like, can we put some sort of like traffic speed remediation into this design since we're already digging up the street?
So yeah, the fire department just actually allowed us to start using speed cushions on selected streets. So we would have to review that with the fire department to see if that, and a speed cushion is basically, they're like multiple speed bumps, but there's slots in the middle of the roadway, and they're designed to allow the fire trucks to go through because they have a wider wheelbase than most standard vehicles. so it allows them to go through unimpeded. However, most cars and vehicles have to at least hit one side of the speed cushion. And you can look those up on on YouTube or whatever. I'll show you what a speed cushion is. I know I'm not explaining it. I don't have a picture of it tonight, but those are something that they have recently approved. So that is something that we could look at doing.
Yeah. And we have one more. It looks like Sarah.
Hi, I had a question about in concept C, you have your travel lane, your swale, and then the parking area on the side in this concept is remaining unpaved, untouched, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So my question is, because our street looks the way it has for a long time and it has all these puddling on that area, how are you suggesting that that area will drain into the swale? Like right now, that whole area is, usually flooding and puddling, and people have put gravel to address that in front of their yard, but still there's a lot of holes and stuff. So how does it drain to the swale? How do you make that happen? Or how does that work?
So that's an interesting question. Because I have the survey that was taken, and um I'll take a closer look at it, but my understanding was that most of it was pitching, like the gravel areas were pitching towards the swale, and it was just that the swale was filled in and there was nowhere for the water to go. So you're saying that there's areas where you're seeing that's not like where the swale used to be, and it's more closer to your guys' houses where it's flooding.
I guess I don't really know because I don't see anything that looks like a swale anywhere.
Okay.
Like across the street from us, there's all of the post boxes, the mailboxes, and
Right.
like in this huge puddle. Like to get your mail is really hard, and that goes in front of houses, and it's kind of a big puddle that goes pretty far across. Maybe the post boxes are in the swale. Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely I'll definitely take a look at that because we obviously I think that was one of the constraints I wanted to bring up was that we want that obviously to drain. Um, it is very difficult in terms of looking at our survey of what was done because it's just very wavy and there, like you're saying, there's gravel everywhere in some areas where it's built up, in some areas it's low. Um, so I have the job of trying to make everything drain. But I think ideally it's either we lower the concrete swale so that it's still the lowest point, so everything still drains, and we smooth out like with gravel adjacent to it to ensure it flows in. But that's something we're evaluating right now with ensuring that everything is draining to that swale.
And we are not lowering the street.
Right, we cannot just the pavement, but we can. I mean, I think the swale, yeah, the swale is kind of what we're working with of we can lower it ever so slightly and keep the water, being able to get in. But yes, where the street is we're very limited because of the existing 6 inches of thickness on it.
What would it take to lower it? I mean, if you is there something underneath it that can't be touched, like the pipes or something?
Yeah, it's two things. So the first one is we're touching native, which means that we would be disturbing, the LI, like that would trigger the LID if we're disturbing enough. But it's actually more the sewer. The sewer is directly in the center of the roadway, and I think at the lowest point, which is like almost halfway in the middle of the road. Um, that is where we have like almost like 2 feet of cover on the sewer. And so we're also very limited to how much we can lower that. So it's kind of those two constraints of disturbing native and then the cover on our sewer.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Rob, just checking in with you. How are we doing? We're about 15 minutes over our scheduled meeting time.
Yeah, I think we should wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah, do you just want to, Kimberly, want to go to the next slide and we'll. All right, yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and end the meeting, and I just, all of us want to thank you for all your participation, and we will take these into consideration, and then again meet on June 30th. It sounds like at CHOPS. I do want to let everyone know that we have the project on our website at srcity.org/CIP. You would just click on the list of capital projects, and our project ID is C02540. Additionally, I believe you all have my email address, but please feel free to ask for any questions from now until the next meeting, and of course, anytime after. But yeah, I just again want to thank you all for joining and appreciate your participation. Thank you.
And just a reminder that we'll have a video up on the website within a few days as well. Thanks, everyone.